Let's be honest. When you hear the name King Henry VIII, your mind probably jumps to one thing, his 6 wives. But that's just scratching the surface. The real story here is so much bigger. It's about how one man's personal obsession completely upended a nation, kicking off a revolution that would shape England for centuries.
And that really brings us to the core question of this whole thing. How on earth did one king's desperate, all-consuming need for a male heir set off a chain reaction that would completely rewrite England's religion, its politics, and its entire identity? To really get a grip on the man, we've got to go back to the beginning. And here's the wild part. Henry was never even supposed to be king. Not at all. He was the second son, the spare, always living in his older brother's shadow. Then, in a flash, everything changed. He was born the backup plan, right? But when his older brother Arthur suddenly died in 1502, young Henry was shoved into the spotlight. Just 7 years later, he's on the throne, a job he never trained for, but one that he would come to define.
And in his youth, Henry was the total package for a Renaissance king. Seriously, he wasn't just some stuffy ruler. He was a musician, a writer, and a seriously talented athlete. He packed his court with artists and thinkers, making England this buzzing hub of European culture. The guy was brimming with ambition.
But underneath all that glitz and ambition, one single problem started to fester and grow until it consumed him. He called it his great matter, this relentless, overwhelming need for a legitimate son to make sure his family, the Tudor dynasty, would actually last. See, his first marriage to Catherine of Aragon was a huge political power move, an alliance with Spain that lasted for more than 20 years. And they did have a child, a daughter named Mary, but after one heartbreaking pregnancy after another, it became painfully clear Catherine wasn't going to give him the son he was so desperate for. And for Henry, this wasn't just a personal bummer. It was a crisis that threatened the stability of his entire kingdom.
So now we're at a real turning point. Henry is absolutely convinced his marriage is cursed, and he needs a way out. An annulment. But there's a big problem, and that problem is the Pope, who flat out refuses the king's request. So what happens when a king's will smashes head-on into the unbreakable authority of the church? Well, Henry's answer was something else. It was radical, it was audacious, it was completely unprecedented. He basically said, fine, if the church in Rome won't give me a divorce, I'll just create my own church, and I'll be the boss. This was the explosive start of the English Reformation. So what was the English Reformation exactly? To put it simply, it was the moment England just cut the cord with Rome. This wasn't just some theological debate, okay? It was a seismic break from centuries of religious authority. And this move wouldn't just get him his divorce. It would also put all the church's incredible wealth right into his pocket. The sequence of events here is actually pretty straightforward. Step 1, Henry demands an annulment. Step 2, the Pope says, no way. Step 3, Henry flips the whole chessboard over, severing all ties with the Catholic Church. And step 4, he declares himself the supreme head of the new Church of England. Just like that, he had the power to grant his own annulment.
But, solving one massive problem just created a dozen new ones. This break with Rome kicked off a really turbulent and bloody period. And this is where we see the man himself begin to change. That charming, charismatic prince, he starts to fade, replaced by a ruthless, paranoid tyrant. And nothing, I mean nothing, illustrates this dark turn better than the infamous saga of his 6 wives. The pattern is just chilling. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Think about it. His marriage to Anne Boleyn, the very reason he started the Reformation, ended with her execution. His obsessive quest for an heir left a horrifying trail of tragedy and terror. And after all that chaos, what was the final score? After changing a nation's religion, after 2 divorces and 2 beheadings, Henry finally got what he wanted from his 3rd wife, Jane Seymour. One son, Edward. All that turmoil for a single male heir.
So this leaves us with a legacy that is just full of contradictions. On the one hand, yeah, he was a nation builder. He strengthened the power of the throne, he reformed the government, and he grabbed a ton of wealth and land for the crown. But on the other hand, he was a monster, a brutal tyrant who executed his own wives and his political enemies without blinking, becoming a paranoid, sick old man in his final years. At the end of the day, his entire life was just this incredible display of willpower. It was all driven by this potent mix of ambition, charisma, and just a ruthless, relentless pursuit of what he wanted. personally and politically, no matter what it cost his country or the people who were supposed to be closest to him.
So we're left with this huge question. Was he a great builder who modernized England? Or was he a brutal tyrant driven by his own ego? You know, the most honest answer is probably that he was both. And it's just this powerful, chilling reminder of how the personal desires of one single person can fundamentally and forever change the destiny of an entire nation.